Hello everyone and welcome back to 6++. I'm Ben and on Faction 101 today we are talking Tyranids. In this video I'm going to go through why I love my favourite faction, the Tyranids, from their lore and aesthetic to their performance on the tabletop. So let's jump right in. The Tyranids are an extragalactic race of terrifying insect-like monsters. They are described as being without number, incredibly ferocious, and controlled by a Gestalt hive mind, which is unknowably old and hyper-intelligent, the match of any human or Xenos tactician. So let's quickly mention the 1979 film Alien by James Cameron. As a kid, I loved these films, and they were a point of bonding for me and my mum, actually, who, despite hating horror and gore, for some reason loved these films, perhaps because of the strong female heroine of Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver. Anyway, Tyranids in 40k are clearly and undeniably based on the Xenomorphs from the Alien franchise, as well as bugs from Starship Troopers and possibly the Cthulhu of H.P. Lovecraft. All of these influences I love and appreciate, and a lot of the rules and visuals of the army pay homage to those films and books. So one of the main things that I love about Tyranid lore is their completely alien nature and the unfathomable motivations that they have. So we have no idea why they're in the galaxy or what they want other than to feed. The brilliance here, I think, comes from the fact that we can fill in the blanks ourselves and give human motivation to things which are completely non-human. For example, I like to imagine personally that they are escaping their own galaxy from an even bigger threat. Now, this is quite a well-known theory. I did not come up with it, but it's one of my favourites because the idea of there always being a bigger and badder threat in the 40k universe feels really exciting and compelling to me. Another thing I really love about the background of the bugs is the way they are described as being very adaptive. Like the Xenomorph in the Alien films, the Tyranids have this ability to change their metabolisms and essentially mutate their biology to suit any combat situation. So sadly, this is not very well interpreted in the gameplay of the faction, but Games Workshop certainly are trying to improve this, and I think it gets better and more thematic in every edition. I'll talk more about this in the gameplay section. The final reason why I really love Tyranids is because that they are, in my eyes at least, completely morally neutral. So they have no emotions as we would understand it, or any drive for conquest or revenge. The Tyranids simply wish to feed and survive, and in this sense they remind me a lot of the innocence of wild animals. It could be argued that every single faction in the 40k universe is evil and kind of racist, but this doesn't apply to Tyranids. They're never arrogant or malicious. They simply do whatever they have to survive, and they don't strive for conquest or glory. Now, I really hate arrogance in humans and in the characters of 40k as well. So I've been reading copious amounts of Horus Heresy novels over the last couple of years, and these books have shown me how incredibly arrogant most of the Primarchs and Astartes are. For this reason, Tyranids are a refreshing change to the played out storylines of honour, conquest and revenge that come up again and again in the universe. Let's talk a bit about the sculpts of the Tyranid range themselves. After all, we love the modelling side of this hobby, and getting our models on the table is one of the greatest joys. Just to go back to the Alien reference by James Cameron, a lot of the visual style in those films was created by the mastermind H.R. Giger, who's known for his creepy, pseudo-sexual, insect-like art. Now, GW has never borrowed too heavily from that for kind of obvious reasons, but I think you can definitely see its influences within the range of models. Especially looking at some of the smaller details, we see organic holes and fissures in the Tyranid's hide, tentacles, fleshy sacs and protrusions, and all manner of creepy organic styling. For me, the Tyranid range is quite a mixed bag, which is exacerbated by the fact that there are a lot of very old sculpts in the range. Personally, my favourite sculpts are those which portray the ferociousness in close combat that the Tyranids are supposed to be known for. So I'm thinking about the Raveners, Hormagaunts, Genestealers, Hive Tyrants, Trigon, Carnifex and Demacaren, amongst others. These models look really ferocious. They have sharp claws, big gaping mouths full of needle-sharp teeth, and generally have a great sense of dynamism and movement in the model. I think the Tyranid Aesthetic is a difficult line to walk between insect and dinosaur, but at least with the new kits, I think GW has done a really great job. I absolutely love the fact that the bugs have a huge range of models, including small gribblies, medium-sized warrior creatures, and other sort of elite infantry, all the way up to gigantic-sized bioconstructs like the Carnifex, Trigon, and Demacaren. This gives the hobbyist a great range to work with in terms of practicing different skills, and a great variety when it comes to modelling, painting, and playing. Another thing I really love about the Tyranids is the way that the models blend tough and fragile elements. For example, they all have a thick chitinous carapace, which is described as being as tough as Space Marine ceramite armour, but this only covers a portion of their bodies. The other parts are softer flesh or hide, which is largely unprotected. This is a really great example of the background matching the models and also matching the gameplay. The bugs are described as being incredibly numerous, and some of them being walking tanks and really tough, but also being rather fragile if hit in the right spot. And finally, I love the absolute alien look of the models. They look like nothing else in the Warhammer 40k universe. So they really appeal to the hobbyist who wants a unique challenge, and not just to follow the herd of power armor, which is essentially equivalent on all Imperial Marines, Traitor Marines, Eldar, Tau, and others. And I do collect some of those other armies, but I do think Tyranids are completely different. And although the armour may look slightly different on the other factions, it's essentially panels with joints and vents. So lots of edge highlighting, and it's all kind of manufactured. But with the exception of orcs and chaos demons, which sport much more organic surfaces, I think Tyranids do look the most alien. Okay, so gameplay. In terms of gameplay, I love the Nids for several reasons and hate them for several more. Now, when I say I hate them or I love them, this is largely to do with how the way they play lines up with the way that they've been described to me thematically by Games Workshop over the years. I imagine this is the case with most wargamers, excluding those who are not really into the background or modelling aspect of the hobby. And to those people I say, f*** off. So let's start with the things that I do like about the bugs. In the lore, they are described as being incredibly fast and ferocious, and I think this does come across in the way that they play. The bugs have the ability to move one unit, at least, faster than any other in the entire game that I know of, possibly excluding flyers and aircraft and things like that. At the moment, this is achieved through the use of support characters, stratagems, psychic powers, and a few good dice rolls. One of my great joys during a game is being able to move my massive Demacaren monster 70 inches throughout the course of a turn, leaping forward, being spurred on by the force of the hive mind, propelled further by the pheromone enticement of the Swarmlord, and then retreating using the cunning of the Great Devourer. Another thing I really love about the bugs is their range of different units. One can organise a full and quite powerful shooting list with the likes of the Hive Guard and Exocrine, or the player can lean into the arguably more thematic close combat build using large squads of Gene Stealers, Hormagaunts, and big bugs like the Carnifex and the Swarmlord himself. Now for some things that I find a bit annoying. Buckle up, buckaroos. In the lore, Nids are described as being ultra fast, incredibly ferocious up close, and without number. Stories in codexes and books describe millions upon millions of smaller bug life forms flooding defense lines and literally clogging up the guns of the enemy with their numbers. This hasn't really been possible to apply to the tabletop game for a few reasons. Firstly, the amount of models you would have to buy would make it financially unviable for most collectors, or for Games Workshop themselves if they were to sell bug troops at a very low price. Secondly, painting and then fielding hundreds and hundreds of small models is physically and mentally very demanding, and is perhaps too daunting of a task to entice most collectors. Because of this, Games Workshop have not really been able to lean into the true horde numbers that the bugs are supposed to be able to bring to bear. Finally, I believe that Games Workshop have not been able to truly do justice to the horde archetype in the game in general, but particularly in relation to the bugs, because playing that many models does take a longer time, and can mean that a 3-hour game at 2,000 points turns into a 6-hour game at the same points level. If Games Workshop wishes to extend the appeal and grow as a company, gaining more players, which of course they do, then it will serve them well to create a shorter, snappier game. This is just simply more accessible to most people. Most people, especially when first getting into the hobby, may not have 6 hours to play a game, and several months to paint up their army in which to play that game. So the Horde archetype simply doesn't seem to work. I believe there are some creative ways to get around this rather than just reducing the points of a Termagant model, for example. We could see something along the lines of the Green Tide or Tide of Traitors for Tyranids. How about the Endless Swarm? It baffles me that the bugs did not have this stratagem in previous editions in the same way that Black Legion and Orcs did, but here we are. I can imagine a great 2CP stratagem to bring back a 30 model unit of Termagants, with some restrictions of course to stop it getting out of hand. Another aspect of the gameplay that I find quite frustrating, in regards to it not being in line with the background of the faction, is that Nids are not very good in close combat. And this surprises a lot of people, and I often kind of find myself rolling my eyes during a game when this comes up, at people's amazement that Tyranids just don't hit very hard in combat. There are several armies which perform far better in close combat at this moment in time, and it really feels like the bugs don't have a niche within the game. There are so many factions available to the hobbyist. I do understand the difficulty with making each of them have a unique gimmick whilst also keeping the game balanced. For example, if Nids became the #1 close combat army in the game, where does that leave Blood Angels, who are also supposed to be incredibly ferocious melee combatants? So perhaps Nids could be the high AP army, being quite fast, hitting reasonably hard and with a decent amount of attacks, but not being particularly strong or accurate. I'd also like to see ways to honour the thematic background of the faction in the list building stage. For example, it would be really cool if a player could choose to build an army entirely of big Tyranid monsters, and in return for excluding certain other non-thematic units, the player received a buff in toughness for those monsters, or something that really rewarded certain builds. I think they tried to do this with the Blood of Baal book in Psychic Awakening, but missed the mark. All in all, I'm really hopeful for the next Tyranid Codex. It's been a really long time coming, and the faction has been quite weak, except for a few builds run by very talented players, for about 3 editions now. So there we have it. Those are my reasons for loving and hating the Alien bugs. From the amazing but cryptic background based in the Alien film franchise and artwork of H.R. Geiger, to the ferocious, often gruesome style of the models, to an army with some fun tricks on the tabletop but a lot of room to improve, I think the bugs offer a really deep and rewarding hobby experience. And please, please, please GW, give them the love their fanbase deserves. Thanks everyone very much for listening. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment and subscribe. It really helps and supports us. If you didn't like the video, let us know why. We're always keen to hear from the wonderful 40k community that we love so much. With that, I've been Ben for 6++, and we'll see you next time.